During a casual survey, a ranger discovered an unwell tiger in the snow and aided in its recovery. The tiger displayed gratitude, and the events following its release into the wilderness will warm your heart. Alexei Ivanov dedicated his life to conserving wildlife in eastern Russia. As a veteran ranger, he was deeply familiar with the dense woods that spanned across this secluded area, which served as habitat for many critically endangered species, including the regal Siberian tiger. Known for its colossal build and power, the Siberian tiger's survival is increasingly challenged in a sterile environment. Human intervention has disrupted their habitats, leading to a dwindling prey count and increased fatal encounters with hunters. Recently, another threat emerged: the canine distemper virus, a disease transmitted from domestic dogs to wild tigers. Alexei became aware of the ailment affecting the tigers. He aspired to prevent such a catastrophe in his territory, but destiny had other plans. As he navigated the woods that day, distress signals were too prominent to overlook. Spotting a tigress sprawled in a clearing, he understood she was in dire need. The tigress, whom Alexei later called Queen, was too weak to move. The sight pained him. Caring for a wild tiger, especially one that was gravely ill, was no easy task. He needed to get her medical attention, which involved sedating her and transporting her to a facility equipped to handle such a formidable creature. The practicalities were tricky, and the hazards were high. However, Alexei was not one to shy away from adversity. He had spent years preparing for such circumstances, honing his skills, and creating a network within the conservation community. He knew he could count on their support and was resolute about saving Queen. Gathering assistance from wildlife doctors and ecologists, Alexei began the careful procedure of preparing a tranquilizer dart. He raised his dart gun and aimed. His hands were steady, his mind focused. He pressed the trigger. The dart shot through the air, hitting Queen in the shoulder. She lifted her head, then gradually fell unconscious. Alexei waited, giving the medication time to act. Confirming that Queen was fully sedated, he carefully approached her. He scrutinized her, reassuring her of her grave condition. The distemper had fiercely attacked her body, and medical aid was urgently needed. Without delay, he communicated with his team and arranged for her to transfer to the closest wildlife recovery facility. Just 2 hours later, while moving the tiger onto makeshift stretchers, Alexei felt a profound sense of duty settle in. His life had been pledged to the protection of animals like her. Now her survival was entirely in his hands. Once Queen was safely secured, Alexei and his team set off on the lengthy trip back to the recovery facility. There, veterinarians confirmed his grim assumptions. The monarch was suffering from distemper, likely contracted from domestic dogs that roamed too close to the forest, yet another consequence of increasing human encroachment into the wilderness. The initial days at the recovery center were crucial. Queen was quarantined to prevent contagion to other wildlife. Alexei watched over her while the veterinary team administered medication and fluids to stabilize her condition. Progress, however, was slow. The tigress was frail, her body in constant battle with the infection. Alexei's initial efforts to treat her were heavily tested. The quarantine space was cramped. Despite her weakened state, Queen retained her wild instincts, rejecting confinement and resisting human contact. Each time Alexei or a vet approached, she growled and attempted to strike. Juggling his ranger duties and the necessity of saving Queen consistently put Alexei in tough spots. He had obligations in the forest, yet every time he left her side, guilt gnawed at him, accompanied by dread that something would go wrong during his absence. His sleep was fitful and fraught with visions of the Queen vanishing. Alexei's relentless endeavors invoked mixed reactions. Some admired his unwavering commitment, deeming his actions noble. They grasped the significance of preserving a creature as magnificent as Queen and understood its implications for wildlife preservation. Those who supported him extended aid and shared resources, hoping to contribute to the cause. However, not every villager was supportive. Some fretted over the potential threat a fully recovered and possibly escaped tigress could pose to them. The community was skeptical of Alexei's approach, believing he could have utilized his time and resources more effectively. As a result, disagreements in the locality grew, leading to heated exchanges during town hall meetings and community gatherings. Alexei contacted professionals in wildlife conservation and ecology for guidance and additional aid. Among those he reached out to was Dr. Olga Sidorova, a celebrated wildlife doctor. She kindly proposed to visit the center to help treat the tigress. Her significant experience with large predators brought a ray of hope. Dr. Sidorova arrived after a few days, equipped with up-to-date medical machinery and a detailed recovery plan. Both she and Alexei worked tirelessly, administering antiviral agents, antibiotics, and immune boosters to the tigress. They monitored her closely, adjusting their strategy based on her responses. Despite their efforts, the tigress's health remained precarious. Moments of optimism were interrupted when she seemed to regress, leaving both Alexei and Dr. Sidorova disappointed. The emotional toll on them was profound. Despite their Herculean efforts, the tigress's health took a shocking turn when the disease and the stress from confinement triggered aggressive behavior. One day when Alexei approached her enclosure to feed her, the tigress lunged toward the fence and growled ominously. Her eyes, once gentle, now shone with feral intensity. Alexei recoiled. He anticipated some resistance, but this level of aggression was frightening. The tigress's growls echoed through the rehab center, causing concern among the staff and visitors. News of her aggression quickly spread throughout the neighboring areas, morphing initial mixed responses into criticism. Gossip about the tigress's aggressive behavior seeped into town, breeding apprehension and confusion. Sentiments heightened at the town hall meeting. "She's a menace to everyone," asserted one inhabitant. "If she escapes, she might harm someone. We can't afford to take such a risk." This viewpoint resonated with others, and soon a chorus of voices rose in concern and dissent. "Alexei, you've given it your best shot, but it's time to consider the bigger picture. This tiger has overstepped boundaries. We need to put her down before something terrible happens." The collective fear and anger of the community bore down on Alexei. Although he understood their concerns, he found it impossible to accept the idea of euthanizing the tigress. He petitioned for more time, but despite his appeal, the call for her life to be ended grew louder. Local administrators began to weigh the demands of the community. Realizing he needed to act swiftly, Alexei tapped into his pool of wildlife experts, searching for an alternative therapy that could soothe the tigress and control her aggression. One of his connections, Viktor Andreev, a renowned zoologist with experience in treating large carnivores, proposed a groundbreaking approach. "Alexei, we need to focus on the neurological effects of the treatment. There's an experimental method underway that combines antiviral drugs and neuroprotective therapy. It's unconventional, but could be our best option." Without hesitation, Alexei and Dr. Sidorova initiated the new treatment regimen. The process was delicate, requiring precise doses and constant supervision. The medication was administered through a feeding pole to limit direct interaction and mitigate the risk of provoking the tigress's aggression. The following days were nerve-wracking. The tigress's demeanor oscillated between intense aggression and calm moments. Alexei spent countless hours by her enclosure. As the treatment progressed, small encouraging signs began to appear. The tiger displayed less aggressive behavior and grew more curious about her environment. Each change was meticulously recorded, and Dr. Sidorova and Alexei adjusted the treatment as necessary. However, the gradual progress was not enough to appease the growing impatience of the community. One evening, returning home exhausted, Alexei found a threatening note on his door. "Put an end to this, or we will." The threat was palpable. Alexei knew he had to intensify his efforts to save the tigress and establish her value. With the resolve to protect her, he organized a community gathering to share updates on her progress. He invited Dr. Sidorova and Dr. Andreev to present medical findings and explain the promise of the treatment. Their presentation was comprehensive and enlightening, emphasizing the strides made in improving the tigress's health and the scientific reasoning behind the unique approach. Though some fears within the community subsided at the end of the gathering, skepticism persisted. "We need more time," Alexei asserted emphatically. "Our queen is responding to the therapy. We have the chance to spare her life and demonstrate our ability to coexist peacefully with these extraordinary creatures." His plea concluded with a reluctant agreement to give Alexei more time. But the ultimatum was clear. The tigress's attitude had to substantially change, or the locals would take matters into their own hands. Alexei's routine transformed into a rigorous cycle of caring for the regal feline and performing his ranger duties. Each day began before sunrise and ended well past midnight. His commitment provided little opportunity for rest. In the quiet of the rehabilitation facility at night, Alexei would sit by the tigress's pen, remaining vigilant. He closely observed her, tracking changes in her behavior or health status. On particularly cold nights, he donned a warm jacket and carried a thermos of hot tea to stave off the chill. Despite enduring physical discomfort, he found solace during these moments. A profound bond began to form between Alexei and the tigress. One evening, while preparing her medication, he noticed she was watching him with greater attention. This subtle yet significant indication of the treatment's effectiveness filled him with hope. The tigress's hostility began to wane, and Alexei felt the mounting burden of responsibility. He longed for the companionship of his ranger colleagues, but he found courage in believing that the tigress's survival could contribute meaningfully to conservation efforts. Nevertheless, the threat of poaching loomed large. The tough hide and body parts of Siberian tigers were highly sought after in the black market, and poachers had no qualms about taking extreme measures to trap these magnificent animals. Alexei's vigilance extended beyond the tigress's pen. He made frequent rounds of the nearby forest, searching for signs of illicit activity. On an exceptionally cold night, while patrolling through the snow, Alexei stumbled upon fresh footprints. These footprints led him to a makeshift camp, where he discovered evidence of traps and snares designed for larger animals. Alexei dismantled the traps and reported his findings to local law enforcement. He managed to thwart an immediate threat, but was acutely aware that danger was always lurking. Despite continual obstacles, Alexei's bond with the tigress deepened. He admired her tenacity and determination to live. A particularly poignant moment occurred during a night watch. The tigress, slumped in a corner of her pen, slowly approached the fence where Alexei was seated. She settled down beside him, their eyes meeting across the metal bars. Gossip about the tigress's health had reached a prominent conservationist, Dr. Gornostaiva, who arrived to offer her assistance. Known for her innovative treatment methodologies, she made a strong impression on Alexei during their initial encounter. She exuded calm and confidence. Dr. Gornostaiva quickly assessed the tigress's condition, evaluated the treatment strategies, and meticulously reviewed the health records. "You've done exceptional work up to this point, Alexei," she said. "However, I believe we can do more for her." She proposed a new sophisticated treatment plan incorporating the latest antiviral medications and supportive therapies to bolster the tigress's immune system. Alexei was eager to employ any methods to alleviate her condition, and improvements followed swiftly. Just days after initiating the new treatment, signs of recovery emerged. The tigress's aggressive episodes drastically decreased, and her overall demeanor became more relaxed. She resumed eating regularly, and playfulness returned to her life in the enclosure. For the first time, Alexei cautiously began to feel hopeful. News of the tigress's positive response spread quickly, winning over many skeptics. An extraordinary moment occurred one morning when Alexei and Dr. Gornostaiva were preparing medication for the tigress. With keen interest, she approached the fence. Her eyes were alert. "Heart," Alexei thought suddenly, extending his hand. The tigress, for the first time, gently touched his fingers through the bars. It was a raw moment of trust and connection. Dr. Gornostaiva expressed her delight. "She's doing better than I anticipated, and she knows you're behind her recovery." However, the struggle to save the tigress was not yet over. As anticipation grew, winter threats in the far east of Russia mounted. Frigid temperatures made it challenging to maintain a stable habitat for the tigress, and the risk of power outages loomed high. Working tirelessly in shifts on the generators, Alexei and his team did everything they could to keep her enclosure warm and comfortable. Unfortunately, the harsh cold hindered her recovery. Her health fluctuated once again. There were days when she seemed to regain her old routines, while on others, she retreated to a corner, exhibiting signs of distress and refusing meals. Each decline felt like a punch to Alexei's heart. During a particularly cold night, Queen's health took a sudden turn for the worse. She showed signs of lethargy, and her breaths appeared shallow and strained. Alexei and Dr. Gornostaiva fought throughout the night to stabilize her. Alexei's physical and emotional exhaustion reached a tipping point, but soon the tigress's health displayed more consistent signs of improvement. It was heartening to see her regain strength. As winter faded into spring, Queen's recovery accelerated. Her fur thickened to a glossy coat, and her eyes sparkled with health. Alexei and the team knew they were on the brink of an important breakthrough. The final weeks were bustling with activity. Alexei and Dr. Gornostaiva conducted numerous tests to ensure that the tigress was free of the virus and healthy enough to be reintroduced into the wild. All their efforts were finally coming to fruition. The following day, she was scheduled to be transported to the release site. On a crisp, sunny afternoon, Alexei stood next to the tigress's enclosure, ready for her to be released back into the wilderness. When the entrance gate slowly swung open, the tigress paused for a beat. Her golden eyes locked onto Alexei's. There was a silent nod of gratitude in her gaze, as if thanking him for every effort, for standing by her when the world seemed to shut her out. Then, turning on her heels, she strode into the forest. Her powerful gait was a living testament to her resilience. Alexei watched as she blended into the trees, knowing she had found her rightful place, healthy and free, a beacon of hope for her species' future. In the following months, Alexei often thought about her. The bond they formed during her recovery was extraordinary. Even though the tigress lived freely in the wild, Alexei always sensed her presence around him. One sunny autumn morning, he climbed a hill that overlooked the forest where she had been released. Taking in the beauty of the sprawling wilderness, he felt a wave of tranquility wash over him. He knew the tigress was out there, thriving in her natural environment. In a moment of exhilaration, he dropped onto his back and began making snow angels, echoing the unbridled joy of a child. Suddenly, he felt her presence once again. A colossal Siberian tiger emerged from behind a row of trees. Alexei froze. He had no shield, no refuge. The situation had evolved into something more precarious than ever before. The tiger steadily paced closer, taking on a feline posture, seemingly on a hunt, its gaze locked onto him. At that moment, Alexei recognized her. She was the queen. The tigress performed playful bounds, mimicking a cat diving in the snow, devoid of any menace. Alexei erupted in laughter. He rolled backward, laughing heartily. The next moment, the tigress was beside him, nuzzling her neck against him, sniffing him curiously. As he attempted to sit upright, she rose and hopped joyfully through the fluffy snow, then pivoted and walked back toward the trees. A smile was permanently etched on Alexei's face. Indeed, he mused, tigers are capable of embracing deep-seated feelings like gratitude and connection. It was a truly moving spectacle. If you have profound wildlife rescue stories to share, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, but until then, we call it a wrap. Catch us in the next video.